Hello, everybody. This is Andrew. I am looking forward to another one of our monthly office hours. Thank you very much for everybody who is joining me today. If you wouldn't mind, somebody just give me a little bit of feedback in the chat to let me know that you can both see the video, you can see me on the camera, and you can hear me as well. That would be greatly appreciated, just to get a little bit of validation that everybody can both see and hear me. I'm excited about today. I don't have a ton of questions that have been submitted ahead of time. Don't have a ton of stuff really that has been that has really happened in the news lately. But that's perfectly fine. We can always fill up the time. I seem to always have a good knack for being able to do that. Thank you for those of you who are sounding off in the chat. I appreciate it. Let me know where you guys are connecting from, guys and gals. I'm curious where everybody is. I'm on the East Coast of the United States, well, at least for me, chilly, Florida. Yeah, so but I'm curious where everybody else is. Like, are you in Europe? Are you in Asia? Are you getting up in the middle of the night and joining us from East Asia? At any rate, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, really appreciate everybody who is here today. I'm going to run through a few things first and kind of go through our questions that we've got, and discuss something that was announced yesterday with really not much of a heads up, which kind of indicates that there may have been a bit of a security concern with this, but I don't think that's the main reason. I think it's part of a review. But anyway, we'll get to that in just a minute. Let me go ahead and let's, before we get started, really diving into everything, I like to just spend a little bit of time here to kind of just recap for those of you who are new with us. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Andrew Connell. Hello. I am a longtime SharePoint / Microsoft 365 developer. So I started my days in the SharePoint world about 20 years ago in September of 2003, actually more than 20 years ago. And I've been living in SharePoint world. I've been living in the more recent years, Office 365, SharePoint Online, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Embedded, and now spending a lot more time with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So I have a company called Voitanos where I do all of my education-based stuff. So it's where I write my articles. It's where I'm getting back into the webinar game. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the free webinars, and also you'll find a bunch of self-paced courses and stuff on my site as well. If we have time, I can maybe talk a little bit about, maybe even give you a preview that if things go well today, I will have a brand new website later this afternoon. Doing the final stuff right now. Everything looks good except for one little thing, getting that fixed, and got a few more tests and stuff that I want to run to make sure that everything is fine. But my intention was to launch it on Sunday night, and then my intention was to launch it last night, and now my intention is to do it today. So I really have to do it today because going on a 2 trips back to back later on Friday, later this week, and I'm not about to do a family vacation with my family, who we don't get together with my son in college. We don't get to see him all that much. And if I'm fixing a site and fixing bugs on a site while we're on vacation, big bad dad moment. So I want to get the site launched as fast as I can today, so that I can just deal with anything that comes up this week before we leave. Okay. Anyway, I'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. It's really cool. I love what's done here, and I think the thing I'm most excited about is that it's beautiful. And the only credit that I get for it is hiring a really good designer that did it. It's the first time I've actually hired a designer instead of me creating it myself. So having a friend design stuff sometimes, but I created the existing site, so this is nice to have a real thing. You can learn a little bit more about me on my site. You can go to voitanos.io. The other domain is my personal site, which is that is very neglected. Later this year, I hope to kind of revamp that one too, to make it more like just a very simple presence, since all of my technical work is all being done on the Voitanos side. I'm also a 20-year Microsoft MVP. 20 plus year Microsoft MVP, and get to go through the whole filling out the forms to submit for application to be renewed this coming year as well. For those of you who are new to my office hours, my monthly office hours, this is a free thing that I do for the community. It is a place for you to come and ask questions about anything Microsoft 365 developer related. The big things I focus on these days are SharePoint Framework, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365 Copilot. So what I like to do first in this is do a little bit of like a state of the union on where we are with these different things and what do we know that's new. But mostly from the perspective, or primarily from the perspective of how it impacts developers. And when I say developers, I mean full stack web developers. Full stack web developers are, it used to be like a buzzwordy kind of hipster term, but now I think it actually is, it's much more reputable now and reliable based on looking at the different job boards. What this is, what I would call this and what actually Wikipedia does as well. A full stack developer is someone who works on both the front end and the back end. So in my definition, when it comes to Microsoft 365, I like to look at that as I'm spending my time working on client-side based solutions primarily, because that's how most of our extensibility works inside of Microsoft 365. But I also am responsible and fully capable of also implementing everything back on the server side for all the infrastructure that I may need in order to create and to deliver my application. I do exclude like the maker, typical maker person from this description. So low code, no code tools are not what I generally focus on, more on the dev side. But I'm not discounting those low code, no code tools. I just want to make sure that it's clear that, we kind of know where we are. So that's where my experience is. I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm no Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, Power Copilot. Copilot Studio. I'm the first one to tell you I'm not the expert at those things. I know what they can do, but I don't know everything that they can do. Okay, so if you have a question that you wanted to get answered today, the best thing that I would recommend you do is please post it in the chat in the YouTube live stream. So that way other people who watch the recording will be able to see it. I'll see it as well. For in the future though, if you sign up to my newsletter, once you sign up to my newsletter, if you scroll to the very bottom of it, once you get your first email, you'll see a place where you can manage your preferences, and you can get an email reminder about a week ahead of time before we hold these office hours. And what I find is that some students will then go through and they will reply to the reminder with their questions, or we have a Discord community right now where people can go in and also submit their questions ahead of time. So I've got a few questions I got one from Discord. That was you, Savvy. I'll mention yours. I've got one question that also came from the Discord community. It was not for office hours. It was a guy named Brian. I don't know, Brian, if you're here, if you just sound off in the chat. But it's something I was going to talk about already during the office hours today, because it's a big thing, and it can be a little alarming to people because it just got announced yesterday. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I have a couple other ones that were submitted in my over email from subscribers. So I'm happy to kind of talk through some of those as well. Subscribers to my newsletter, I mean. I wonder, Joe, if you're the one that actually sent me a message yesterday about that, because I see your message in the chat about subscription. If you should buy a subscription or you should wait for a little bit longer to see what happens. So I got an email from somebody about that yesterday, and I was going to bring that up both today and in my newsletter tomorrow. My newsletter next week, not tomorrow. Don't need anything else to my plate right now. Okay, let's talk just really quick. Cool. Joe, welcome. Awesome. So I did read your email. I haven't responded to it because you should, like, my task list today is nuts with this new website. Okay, let me do really quick, State of the Union. There's really nothing new with respect to SharePoint Framework, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Copilot from the last time we got together about a month ago. The current state of the SharePoint Framework is that our current production version is SharePoint Framework version 1.20. And I've gone over this a couple times in the last few months, or last few office hours that we've done, monthly office hours. But if you have any questions about this, please feel free to post them in the chat. So I'm not going to belabor this. We've already been through this multiple times, and there's no news, I guess, that you could say with respect to this. The next thing that we have, though, is what's coming up next. And since we last got together, the beta version of the SharePoint Framework version 1.21 has released. The things that you see listed here are what Microsoft has said previously was going to be in 1.21. I will admit I have not looked at 1.21 yet. If you guys want to, I'm prepared to look at it. And I can show you how I go through and look at these things and how I pick it apart and find what's new. It is, without really even looking at it, so I could be putting my foot in my mouth right off the bat, my understanding is there's only one thing that's in 1.21, and there was even a debate about even shipping 1.21, which it was originally supposed to ship this month in March. But there was a debate about even just punting it until April or May because there was nothing in it. And the change that they were going to make, they realized, wait a minute, we don't even have to go through and ship a new release for this. So I'll talk about that in just a bit. Some of this stuff here, I don't know how much of this is even things that are really part of 1.21. It's kind of, frankly, it's a little irritating how Microsoft does this because like that second bullet point that I have there about a card web part for SharePoint, that is an out-of-the-box card, like a web part that's going to be deployed to our SharePoint Online environments. It has nothing to do with the SharePoint Framework or 1.21. So that is, to me, that's a separate kind of an end-user kind of thing or power user thing. This whole thing about SharePoint Framework-powered SharePoint hosted apps, I don't think that's in 1.21. We'll see. And then the Copilot integration scenarios. Again, I know what they're doing here. I don't know. I'm not entirely clear what they've talked about publicly, so I want to be careful what I say. But I don't think it's anything that is specific that I could say it's SharePoint Framework specific type stuff. I guess it is, but there's nothing like we need a new version of the SharePoint Framework to do it. So just leave that at that right there for now. Now, here's the big thing that just happened yesterday. And this is Microsoft released an article that I'm linking to. I got a short link to it down at the bottom of the slide here. And effectively what Microsoft did is they are changing up. Let me give you the quick summary, and then I'll kind of go back for those of you who aren't familiar with this. So they are changing up the Entra ID application that SharePoint Online uses and SharePoint Framework leverages to obtain an access token that SharePoint Online uses to be granted permissions on another endpoint, like Microsoft Graph or another third-party endpoint that you may create that's secure with Entra ID. The way that this is done is that we grant SharePoint Online a permission, a scope, like say in Microsoft Graph, mail.read. And when we grant SharePoint Online that scope, then the SharePoint Framework components, or really anything, can say, hey, SharePoint Online, give me an access token for Microsoft Graph. And it's a call that's made from client side in SharePoint Online back to a server side SharePoint Online endpoint. And what that does is that endpoint will then go to Entra ID and authenticate using its own Entra ID application, SharePoint Online's Entra ID application. That's the one that's listed on the second bullet point there where it says old. The SharePoint Online Client Extensibility Web Application Principle. So what Microsoft is doing is you grant the permission to SharePoint Online by granting it to that principal, and then SharePoint Online will then go use that to authenticate with Entra ID and say, hey, I need an access token for all the permissions that I've been granted for Microsoft Graph or whatever endpoint you request. And then Entra ID, now that it knows that SharePoint Online has been validated, it will respond back with an access token that SharePoint Online will then return back to the caller, which would be our SharePoint Framework web part or component. And then from there, we can use that access token using the API AAD HTTP client to make a call back to whatever secured endpoint, like Microsoft Graph or like the Microsoft Graph SDK API that we have in the SharePoint Framework. It uses the same pattern. It just uses the access token to initialize the Microsoft Graph SDK. So what did Microsoft do here? What is their change? So what they're doing, and I'm gonna they don't say it a lot, and they don't say this in the article. So I'm going to give you some of my like commentary on this that I believe is accurate, but I haven't validated it with Microsoft yet, because quite frankly, this news just came out yesterday. I was privy that it was happening. However, I didn't really dig into it too much. I didn't really understand it as much. But now that I think I understand it better now, but just haven't had time to talk to Microsoft and get it validated. So what do we know? So let me talk first about that, and then I'll tell you what I think at the very end. So what they've done is they said they are, and this is all happening right now. This is happening the second week in March, which is right now when we're recording this. They have an existing app principal, an Entra ID app principal, which is called SharePoint Online Client Extensibility. You see that one, this guy right here. SharePoint Online Client Extensibility Web Application Principal. And what they've done is they've created a new Entra ID application in our tenants. And that's the new one is called SharePoint Online Web Client Extensibility. So what is now happening is that SharePoint Online, there's nothing we have to do for our code or any of our changes. You just need to understand what the impact of this is. So what Microsoft has already done is they have already copied all of the scopes that we have granted the first one, the old app, the old Entra ID app, is copied all those scopes that we've consented to, or admins have consented to, and it has copied those over to the new SharePoint Online Entra ID application that you see listed here, the one that says SharePoint Online Web Client Extensibility. All right, so that's already happened. What we are still seeing is some of this migration is still in flight. Now, the copy of the permissions has happened, but the code that's going to change in our SharePoint Online tenants, not our stuff, but in the stuff that's deployed at Microsoft, that code is being rolled out, and it is going through like the worldwide distribution this week. Okay, it's going on right now. So it's effective, it's immediate, and it's ongoing. That second to last bullet point I have there. What is the impact of that? Well, if that has already been applied to my tenant, right? First of all, it's all transparent to us, right? We don't have anything we have to do. Nothing is going to break, none of that stuff. But you could do something that could break you. So this is where I'm giving you a bit of a heads up. So what Microsoft has done, or what is going on in the code, is that the code change is going from, instead of logging in as this app with Entra ID to get your access token, the code change is changing it to use this app. Okay, it's changing it to use this one. So what does that mean? Well, if it's already happened to my tenant, then all those permissions that have been applied to this one, they're there. But if I deploy a new web part today and I add a new permission scope that I grant to SharePoint Online today, it'll be applied to this one. All right, and my code will work, and I have nothing to worry about going forward. But let's say that this code change has not been deployed to my tenant yet, and it's going to happen on Thursday. I don't know when it happens, right? We don't know that stuff. It just is happening soon. Here's what's going to happen. So let's say this code has not happened to me yet. If I go create, I have two apps, one for this one and one for this one, and all my permissions that are there right now on the old one have been copied to the new one. But today, like right now, if I go in and I create a new solution and I grant a new permission to SharePoint Online, it's going to be applied to the old one because the code change has not rolled out yet, and the SharePoint Admin Center and the SharePoint Online code base is not pointing to the new app yet. It's still pointing to the old one. So I granted permission on the old one, but that permission has now been added to the old one after the copy of all the consented permissions has already happened. So then on Thursday, when the code finally rolls out from my tenant, that permission is not going to be there, right? Because it's still on the old one. But now all of my SharePoint Online tenant is looking at the new application. So what do I have to do? I've got to go back and I've got to reconsent that permission. So that is the one thing I want to call it here about this effective thing here. Microsoft has said they will update that blog post that I'm linked here at the bottom, that this blog post, this will tell you when the changes have been completely rolled out and we're in the clear, right? But until then, just know that if you roll out something right now, you add a new permission to it, or grant a new scope to it, you may end up running into an issue. All right. Now, a couple of things I want to say about this before I kind of jump on my soapbox and give you my 2 cents. So there are additional permissions on this new app that Microsoft is auto granting to that application. They're automatically consenting to it, that are going to be required for SharePoint Online to work. Furthermore, you will not be able to, like we could today, you will not be able to grant additional permissions to the new application, the new Entra ID app, through the Entra ID management portal. You'll have to do all of this through the SharePoint Online Admin Center or through the different PowerShell or Microsoft 365 CLI options that we have. So we can't go to Entra and manage these permissions. I don't understand why that is, but we can do it in our tenant. We can do it through the different admin interfaces that we have on the Microsoft 365 side, just not on the Entra ID side. Okay, so if you got any questions about that, let me know. Now let me give you a little bit of my 2 cents on why they're doing this. So what I've got here is, let me jump over to my browser real quick and show you the article, and let's zoom it in a little bit. And one of the things related to the article here is I want to cover why they say they're doing this. So they're saying they're doing it for better performance. So with a single application, they're using a faster path for getting the access tokens, and for getting the access tokens, and you have shared access tokens with first-party code. So the same token that's being created is both what our third-party apps are going to use, and if like there is a web part that Microsoft deploys to SharePoint Online that uses Microsoft Graph, it will be using the same token. They're using the same endpoints and the same apps that we're going to be using. They also say better reliability, so to ensure the state of the application principal at app boot. And then more governance. So what this means is that as an administrator, you are going to be able to go in and to, like, if you wanted to, you could go in and remove one of those permissions that Microsoft was automatically granting to this app in order for SharePoint Online to work, if you didn't want that to happen. But with that being said, if you do that, it will impact out-of-the-box functionality. What will it impact? That's not clear, but if you're removing something that SharePoint Online needs to work, it's going to break, right? And then they have this PowerShell script here on how to go through and to take stuff from like the old app to the new app. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of like my thoughts here. So what's the deal with this? So what I think Microsoft has, one of the reasons they've done this is that it's not so much like there was a question in Discord from Brian, who was like, is there like a security incident that happened? And I'm going to say yes and no. Now this is me. This is not me like telling you exactly what happened from Microsoft's perspective, because I don't know any of this stuff yet. Nor have I been told anything like under NDA or anything. So don't worry about that. But what I would believe has happened is that, if you're not familiar, in January 2024, Microsoft got hacked by the Nobelium. It was in the Midnight Blizzard attack that's referred to as Midnight Blizzard. It was by a group called Nobelium, which is a Russian state actor. And what the trigger was that from the 365 side, that actually caused us to lose those developer tenants for the developer program for the time being. Well, we hope for the time being. I'll come back to that. That also kicked off this real focused approach at Microsoft, and all hands on deck. They had already been doing this, but it wasn't like a front burner thing. They have this, Microsoft has adopted the zero trust stance, which even if you're inside of the Microsoft network, nothing trusts that you are who you say you are. And you've got to go back like through a validation and everything. It's not like once I get past the firewall, we're good. You constantly have to make sure that you're authenticated and you have permissions to do what you're saying to do. Well, what Microsoft, what they did is that was the zero trust thing. Well, last year when the Nobelium hack happened, they also kicked off this really strong push called the Secure Future Initiative. And you can Google that and read up on it if you like. But for the most part, my perspective on it is Microsoft went through and said, across the company, do a complete audit of everything and see where are we potentially not, where we have potential flaws and exposure areas. And we've seen different endpoints get shut down. We've seen tokens get shut down, like Exchange Web Services. They have a legacy token model that's going away. We saw some of the endpoints for that were used in Microsoft Teams for Office 365 connectors and incoming and outgoing webhooks. We saw those get shut down and go away fairly quick. We saw isolated web parts, which I'll talk about in a minute, Savvy. We saw those have a bit of an impact get hit as well. I don't know if that's really related to the Secure Future Initiative, but regardless. So we saw a lot of stuff. I think that as part of this audit, which is always going on, I think they looked at this same scenario. Oh, we saw the Entra ID app that we were all using as for the shared Entra ID app that we were using for the PowerShell, the PnP PowerShell stuff, and the Microsoft 365 CLI. We saw where we had to, that thing went away. We got like a 2-week notice and that thing just went away, and we all have to now create our own Entra ID apps in order to make this stuff work. So no surprise. I think that this is part of that. I don't think that they got compromised like recently, which is causing this change. I think it's more that they've, as part of their audit, they looked at it and said, not only we can be more secure with this. So, and I can't really tell because the names kind of imply this, but if you go back and you look at the names they have there, notice where one of the names in the slide here is the web application principal, and the other one is just web client extensibility. I think that this one, so if you know anything about how Entra ID works, you create an app, an Entra ID app, and it lives in a tenant. And if it's a multi-tenant app, you create a service principal in a service principal is created in another app when you grant that, in another tenant. And that's like the connection for your tenant you use the service principal, but that's kind of like a copy or like a proxy copy to the actual app that's living in another tenant. I wonder if this is a real application that is deployed in our tenants that they consent to, and now we have control to go in and change the permissions that this thing has. Because before, Microsoft would consent to the app's permissions that exists that they've created on their side, and then we could go through and add permissions, grant extra permissions to the web application principal, right? But now I think that we're switching to where now there's an app that lives inside of our tenant, potentially. I may not be right about that, because if that's correct, then I don't understand why we can't go through and manage it through Entra ID. But that also is that they're granting the permissions to that app, and we have control to then revoke consent on some of those different things. So that's what I think that they're doing. I think it's I agree with the governance thing. It does make it better for customers because now they can remove some permissions that Microsoft has added if they're not comfortable with it, which before that wasn't possible. And further, I think it's also an improvement thing where we now are using SharePoint, and our third party, are using the same app to obtain access tokens to other endpoints. So that's what I'm gathering from this. But I will also work on getting a confirmation on that as well, just to get a better picture on that. Okay, so with that being said, if anybody has any questions about that, go ahead and post them in the chat. But I want to continue on with our slides, which is, we have that's it. We got nothing. So let me jump over and let me answer a couple questions here that people have submitted ahead of time. So let me jump over to my browser here, and let's go over here into Discord, and let's see if we got any questions here. So this one was the one I mentioned earlier. This one was from when Brian asked this question about the change in the SharePoint permissions grants and Entra ID. So this is our Discord community. But I don't want to show what that one permission there, or that what he posted, because I don't want to disclose who he is in case he's cool with that. So anyway, but Savvy has gone through and posted this question here to the chat, And he said that he has the topic of this office hours, and maybe I've heard of new information about the isolated SharePoint Framework web parts. The official page of this type of web part says the feature is deprecated, but there's no guidance on how and what to switch to. Will there be support for the improved permission model in the future? Microsoft said they're working on something. And if you saw earlier, Savvy, when I talked about on the slide that there was something that they were working on, I think it was in my slides when I said, let's see, where was that? This one right here. But we haven't heard anything about it. So I don't know. So I haven't heard anything new. I'm hoping to learn. But right now I haven't heard anything new. A little frustrating. This is one of those things, quite frankly, like the Microsoft's MVP Summit is in about 2 weeks from, it's going on in 2 weeks. So it starts 2 weeks from yesterday. I'm going to be there, and I have a bunch of questions that I'm looking to learn about, to get updates on. That is one of them. This whole thing right here is one of them. Now, I can't tell you if I'm going to be able to share stuff with you yet, because it's mostly an NDA event. But if stuff is shared that I can report on, then I'm happy to do that, but only subject to what I'm allowed to talk about. That's a big thing that I'm interested in. I'm also interested to see more about what they're talking about with this. There's another thing though that I'm really curious to get input on, or to get an answer on, and I'm going to do a little shameless promotion here, or shameless plug, but I would really, really appreciate if any of you feel this way, if you'd give me your thoughts as well. If you go to my site, voitanos.io, and I'll drop this in the chat, and you go to the articles, you'll find the most recent article is one here about the developer program. And let me just grab this, copy it. Let me come over here. I'm going to drop it in the chat. Make your voice heard. Yeah, Peter, I see what you're saying about the SharePoint host for SPA would be cool. Yeah, I mean, so right now we already have that, right? So we have that where the web part is, you can say the web part is a full page app page. Basically, it's a SPA. And when you deploy it to SharePoint, when you go to create a new page, you get the choice of picking a page template or an app. And when you pick app, your web part is one of those options. And so what Microsoft does is they create a new page for you. And that page has it has a single canvas in the main area of the page. So you still get the header, you still get the sweet bar, you still get the nav on the left, on the left-hand navigation. But the main area that shows up in the main part is just where your web part goes. So effectively, we get a single page app that is hosted inside of a SharePoint Online page. We've had that for years. It's kind of like, I look at it a little bit like, it's like a tab from Microsoft Teams. So you get all the Teams UX, but then a tab is just an iframe. So it gets added right there. What I think they're doing with that, the thing I talked about a minute ago, Savvy, is I think that what they're implying is that that those web parts that we create as single page apps are going to be, you have an option to make them hosted in SharePoint. So they're rendered in a div in that big area, or you say, nope, they're going to render an iframe. So then I have to host it somewhere else. That's how, if you build a tab in Teams and say it works in SharePoint, that's how it works, is that you deploy your code somewhere, it can work inside of Teams. And then when you use it in SharePoint, SharePoint just adds an iframe to the page and points to the URL of where your web app lives. So kind of same concept that both Teams and SharePoint Online do. So we'll have to see where that goes. The one thing I wanted to say though is that so if you're not familiar, the Microsoft 365 developer program, it's free, and it gives us this ability, or it used to give us this ability, to create and obtain a tenant for free that had like 25 licenses in it, 25 E5 licenses, and we refer to these as the dev tenants. They are commercial tenants. There is no difference between a dev tenant and a commercial tenant. All tenants are the same. All tenants are equal. It's just that how we got them is a little bit different. If you want to last year when that whole Novelium thing happened, the hack that I mentioned earlier, Microsoft stopped giving away these tenants. And if you want to learn more about that, if you go to this article that I just put in the chat, you'll find down here, here's a longer article that I wrote explaining what happened what is the current state of things? I wrote it as like, what is the current state of things in the summer of 2024? And unfortunately, it's still true today. So we still are locked down with this. I've been trying, Microsoft originally said, so I kind of explained this piece right here. Microsoft said they'll be back by September 2024. August rolled around. I was at a conference in Washington, D.C. There was a Microsoft AMA. I went to the AMA, raised my hand. I asked in front of everybody at the conference, 500 people, and I was like, what's up? We get them in September? And they're like, maybe like end of the year, beginning of the year. I'm like, okay. That is the last time we've heard anything about this. Microsoft has been mum on this. They've not said a single thing publicly about this. And this is incredibly frustrating because there are a lot of people who are like, should I wait? And so I think, Joe, they're asking, should I wait around? Should I go ahead and buy a subscription? What do I do? What are my options? And I am really trying to push Microsoft to just say something. Like, if you're going to take the dev tenants, they're never going to come back. Just say that. Like, am I happy about it? No. But just say it so that people aren't waiting around and we're left in limbo. Like, what's next, right? No one likes that. No one likes uncertainty. So the point of this post was to not be part of the problem and just keep complaining, but to be part of the solution and to say, what about a developer program that's paid? Like what Apple does for Mac OS and iOS developers. Apple charges $100 a year for that. If you want to put something in the store. You know what? Okay, fine. If it's a cost of doing business and it's going to cost me $100, $150 or $200 to get a developer tenant once a year, fine, right? Considering all my developer tools are free, I think that if the cost of doing business, I think that's okay, right? Yes, I would like there to be a free option to make it easier for me to go play and test things, but a little frustrating. But if that's what it is, fine. I'll come back to your question in just a second, Joe. And I'm going to answer it when I do my next newsletter. What I'm telling people today, and this is my recommendation to you, Joe, what I'm telling people today is, let me finish my statement here. So in this article, I give you, here's my proposal. Let's have a paid developer program. Here's what I would do, constrained tenants. And then here's like a comparison of if I bought a commercial tenant or if I had a special license called a developer license. Here's how that tenant would be like restricted or constrained and what my proposals are. Effectively, like storage would be down like less than 1% of what we get in a commercial tenant. Emails would be severely limited because that was one of the big things that Nobelium did is they created hundreds of thousands of these, or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, I'm not clear, of these tenants, and then sent billions of phishing emails out using Microsoft's on Microsoft.com domain, which was destroying the reputation of it. So my ask to you is when I go to the MVP Summit, I'm trying to get an answer to this. Like I have every intention of finding the guy that owns Microsoft 365 and being like, do you understand how big of a deal this is and how it's impacting people? And I mean, if you know the guy, his name's Jeff Teeper. I plan on going, I know Jeff, I have a good relationship with him. I plan to see him and just be like, man, can you help us like get an answer to this? Because no one's responding. What would really help is if I have some good evidence that shows here's how much of an impact this is having on people. The article that I did last year and the associated video on YouTube, the video is my most popular video every single day since I've published it, right? And I'm not a giant YouTube channeler creator, but it is the number one video every single day for over the last 9 months since it's been published. My article was one of the most popular articles on my site when I originally published it. It is something I get at least 10 questions about every single week from my customers and from just random people asking questions. This article, by proposing a solution, I'm trying to elicit a response. My ask to you is if you care about this, go to the article that I linked to in the chat, right? It's the one that talks about paid dev tenants. Sound off, react on it. Just go in here and click like. All you need is a GitHub account to do this, or put your thoughts in here, right? And pass your thoughts in. Vote on other people's suggestions. Why? because the more people that are showing the activity in this, the more evidence we have to go back and look at Microsoft and saying, see how big of a deal this is? This is impacting a lot of people, and it's more likely to get addressed. I will highlight one thing right here. YP code, guy named Yannick. He has a absolute brilliant idea that I wish I had thought about this. And I plan to make this like, this may be maybe a much better option than what I came up with. If you're doing development for Microsoft 365, you probably have a Microsoft 365 account that you're already paying for, right? Either you work for a company and you have one, or you've bought your own like me and you use that for your production stuff. There's a way to validate my identity. Every license, or maybe there's a restriction on how many, but let's just say every license, whenever you go in and you create a new dev tenant, or whenever you have like as a commercial subscriber, I also get one license on my account that I can consume to maybe I get like a one-time code that says I get a developer license for another tenant that gives me X number of licenses that I can use to sign up with another account. And that account is tied to my Microsoft 365 Entra ID account in my tenant, my real paid account. This is a brilliant idea, absolutely brilliant idea. So I love this idea. If you like it as well, scroll down, find WP code. His name is Yannick. And I hope he's going to be at the MVP Summit so I can actually, I don't think we've met in person before, but it's something I've always wanted to do. I just wish that we'd have more evidence here of more people like dropping comments and stuff in here. So that's my ask of you. Please, if you post something, it'd be absolutely awesome. So that way we can get, hopefully Microsoft to give us some more response to this. All right. Okay. What else do I want to say here? I only have one other question, it looks like. Let me just double check. Yep, I got one question here from, I think it's Patrick M. I think it's here. It looks like your icon is a Kiwi. So Patrick, from Europe/Poland. But if that's really a Kiwi, then maybe you're a New Zealander? I don't know. You say, do I know if Microsoft is finally going to do something with SharePoint Framework and SharePoint on-premises, like upgrading to the newer version? I have no insight on that. In fact, I don't have any optimism that they will ever do anything with that. They said they were going to. If you're not, I have some articles on my site that talk about this around SharePoint around SharePoint Subscription Edition, where here, I'll pull that up real quick. Let's see, home and SE Beware. Is that right? Yep. So if you do SE Beware, I kind of walk through this and I give you a little links to, there you go. So there's 3 articles that I've written on this that I call out here in this article. They started to update stuff. They promised that they were going to do it starting in, I think it was the first half of 2023. They did like a tiny little update. And then they're like, you can see we're going to change our commitment and we're going to actually have a lot more updates coming. And then the next one they did, we're like, what the heck did you do? This is not supported at all. And then the next release said, okay, now we're going to go, you can still upgrade it, but to a lower version. I'm like, it was crazy. So unfortunately, I have not, Microsoft has said nothing about this. I have zero confidence that they're going to do anything about this. At least right now, I have zero confidence in using anything but the SharePoint Framework 1.4.1 in SharePoint 2019 or SharePoint Subscription Edition. And 2016, well, I mean, aside from it being very old now, you can only use 1.1, SharePoint Framework 1.1. What do I think they're doing in the future? More false promises. I have more confidence in that. So it's a snarky response, but I'm being honest. Okay. So I don't have any other questions here. So while we have time, if you have a question, post it in the chat. Happy to address it. I want to call out some stuff here for you guys. I am So a couple things just as a heads up. I said earlier, if you missed it, hopefully brand new website by this time tomorrow. Hopefully if you go to, I don't know where, well, if you're in the United States and you go to bed tonight and the website's still the old website, just know I'm having a late night. Hopefully it'll be up though very, very soon, by like sometime late today. I am also, and the structure of the site is the exact same. So you're not going to, none of the URLs are going to change. One exception, but very, very minor. I am trying to do more. I'm going to start doing more webinars, and I've already started doing this. So if you go to the webinar section, you can see a list of upcoming webinars that I have. So we have our office hours is going to be listed here. So this is today's office hours. When the next time the site builds, this is going to fall down to a previous office hours. And what you can do is you can always go to a previous office hours, like this one right here, and it will have a link or the embedded video that you can watch the office hour session straight here on the site. But I also am doing webinars that require like a registration for them. They're all free. I've done 2 of them recently. So I did one around introduction to the SharePoint Framework. You can go right here and do this. If you go to the webinar, for this, it will require you to put in your email address to watch the previous versions of that webinar, but you get access to it. Furthermore, I also did one last week on an introduction to customizing Microsoft 365 Copilot using agents. So this is mostly a webinar that talks about, how does Copilot work, and then what options and why should I care about extending Copilot with a custom agent and what's involved in doing it. And I cover all of that in this webinar right here. I have other webinars that are coming up that are scheduled right now. I would love your feedback. What do you want to see? Are there other webinars that you would like to see that are not listed here? I got a lot of plans for ones that are coming. You can see I've got one coming in early April about just a deep dive into the Teams toolkit. I've got 2 options for another one coming up at the beginning of April for an overview of what we can do in building apps for Microsoft Teams. And then I have one coming up as well for around tips and tricks around the SharePoint framework. This is actually the one of the sessions I'm delivering at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Las Vegas in May. This one is going to be this webinar is in April. I'm eager to share what I think is like good tips and tricks, but I'm curious to see what people in this, like what else you want to see. So kind of like a way to kind of help me prepare for the conference session. And I'll redo it I'll redo the conference session as a webinar as well. But I got a lot of other ones I want to do. I want to schedule in the future. I've got them all listed. They're just not on the website yet. I'm curious, what do you want to see? Let me know, because I want to make sure I do stuff that you guys are interested in. Oh, okay. There's that. One more thing I'll also tell you, if you want to learn more about how to extend Copilot, if you go to my courses section, and I know it's a little bit last minute notice if it's the first time you're hearing about it, but I have a 2-day workshop that I'm running tomorrow and Thursday. So March 12th and 13th. That is, it's a paid workshop. It's $199. It is 3 hours each day. There are 4 90-minute sessions. And if you miss the live session, so answering Savvy's question really quick, if you miss the live sessions, they're all recorded. You're going to get access to the recording. That'll be part of your course library. So after the webinar, I will publish after the workshop, I will publish all the sessions to the Voitanos course library, where people who registered and paid for the registration will have access to watch the recordings and a place to go through and ask questions. I really hope I can get that up and running before I have to leave on Friday and still packed to be gone for 2 days or 2 weeks. But it will be there. And so if you register for it and miss it, it's okay. The recordings will be available. I ran this workshop earlier in December and got a lot of really good responses from here. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to this workshop. You can go to this page. And honestly, if you go watch let's see if I go back to the webinars, if you go back to this webinar, And if you jump straight towards near the end, like right there, I'll just leave that right there for a second. If you go there, there's a discount code for, or if you scan that QR code, there's a discount code for 15% off. So you can save $30, right? Okay. All right. Now, I don't have any other, I have one question here. Patrick said, at the beginning of this session, I said I could show how you analyze new stuff in SharePoint Framework, if you understand correctly, in case there are no other questions, we could tackle this case. Absolutely. We've got 9 minutes left. So let me show you what I do. So what I have is, and I haven't published these, I really would like to find a way to do this. That's not true. I really need to take the time to do it. I know what I want to do. I have two private repositories, right, that I keep. So this one right here, this SPFx Yo generator history and project history. And what these are they have some GitHub workflows in them. And whenever there is a new release, it goes through and I have a history of what the code base looked like for the generator. And if I created every single project using every permutation, what's different. So let's jump into like the generator itself. And let's jump over to the let's go to the 1.21 branch. And if I look at all the commits, you'll see here that when this came out last week, it triggered my workflow to run and it went through and did a commit. So what's cool about this, if I go over here and I look at the commit, so this is to answer your question, Patrick. Is it Patrick? Am I pronouncing that correctly? So this is what we see as the changes. Now, remember I told you that I don't see much is going to change? That's clear. These are the only files that changed in the generator. So if I look at the package.json, that's not really important for us because package.json is for the actual generator. So that doesn't really affect our stuff. But you can see here that I don't see the dependencies list. This is all the stuff that's going to go in package.json. So you can see that, okay, with this release, we can see that we're bumping up one version. Okay, no big deal. Still nothing. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that is not, that any dependencies that are new that we haven't, that would be updated. Right now I don't see much because these are all just the same. These are SharePoint Framework packages that the system uses. So it looks like they made a slight update on Heft, which is a part of the build engine. This is where that's where we get, okay, so unfortunately nothing in there. So what I do there when I look at this, I'm like, is there anything in here that is going to, so we don't care about that one. So is there anything in here that is going to impact things like new version of React, new version of Fluent UI? No, the answer is no, there's nothing there. Okay, so what are the changes that we have? We have it looks like a form customizers have the template code is updated. And it looks like what they did is they removed a TypeScript error, an expected error, and they added a comment that said the comment in code below is example how to handle this, how to handle save and close events. Note that form save method must be called when a form is saved or closed. Okay. In other words, just documentation stuff. Oh, I see what they did. So this is the code comment, and then they commented out the save method and the on close method, and then the end of the comment. So instead of having a TypeScript code that said we expect an error here, they got rid of that and they just commented the code out saying, hey, this is sample code. And it looks like they changed the endpoints for the manifest that's created for a Teams app. Sorry, for a SharePoint Framework web part that can get packaged up as a Teams app. So it looks like they got rid of these two right here, and they updated this one to have this Z13 and Z1 on it. So in other words, there's nothing in 1.21. Yeah, so there's nothing here in 1.21. There's nothing interesting to it. There's even less than I thought. Here's the other thing that I do, Patrick. What I want to do is I want to have a way to take what I've done here, and I want to be able to go through and have a really quick way to go through and write an article and give people an easy way to browse the diffs and everything between the two files. Because this whole thing that I've got set up here on this repository, if I look at the code and I jump over here to the releases, you can see I've got every single release that's happened from the beginning of time for the SharePoint framework, going all the way back to the initial GA on February 23rd of 2017. So I'd like to have a way to go through and to show that with the people on my site. I just haven't done it yet. The other one so that's the generator, but here's the other one that I do. And this one is where things get really interesting. So I go to project history, and what I have here is I have a separate folder in this repo for every single project type and every permutation. You want to create a web part? Sure. You can create one that's a minimal config, minimal framework, or no JavaScript framework, or using React. And I used to have some that were for on-prem as well, but I took those out of the project with a release because we can't create those anymore. But one of the older releases had it. So for example, if I go to the one for my 1.21 branch, and I look at the most recent, and I look at all the commits, and I look at the commit for a React web part, let's see what changed from the last version to the new version. So YoRC changed. So that's this one. Oh, so these GUIDs that you see here, where it's a library ID, you're always going to get a new GUID whenever you create the project. So that's nothing. Plus beta shows it's a beta release. Okay. The README and the web part, no, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, the solution's nothing different here. That's just new GUIDs and new version numbers. Same with this. Slight update to ESLint, it looks like. A small patch update. The manifest for the web part. Nope, nothing. And package lock is always going to be a big update, but that doesn't really do anything. So in other words, nothing. So there's nothing in 1.21. So there is absolutely, in my opinion, it's like they shipped something just to say check, we shipped it. There's nothing here. I created a new web part. I'm not getting anything new. So, yeah, I see there's nothing here. So Patrick said, thanks for the analysis. I'm wondering when they will add these flexible layout options to SharePoint Framework. Mayor already did. They did. So this is the thing. This is what I was expecting to see the change. Here, let me jump over into this folder real quick, and I'll show you where the change is. So it's nothing in code that you do. You basically have to say that your web part supports it. And the way you do that is inside of the web parts manifest file. So in the component manifest. And there's extra stuff that you can add inside this manifest, but it's not in the project. It's inside of this schema. So if I take the schema file, which as you notice, there's no versioning with this. So if I copy this schema and I open it up in a new window, zoom in a little bit, and I do a search for flexible, you see here, and now we have this new property called flexible sizing that is going to be in, this is going to be inside of, what property is that in? Oh, it's going to be at the root. It's going to be the root of the project because see, there's supported hosts with the options. So now we have a flexible layout setting, and it has some properties that it supports, like dynamic resizing, default column width, and default row height. And you can't add any additional properties to it. Yeah. And it's not required. So this is an extra property you could add. So you could take your existing web part, not even have to upgrade it, and just go into the manifest and add these features here to say, does it support dynamic resizing? I think the default is no, But if you go in and turn it on, then if you add this property, then all of a sudden your web part will support dynamic resizing, and you can say, here's the default size of it when I add it in, right? This is the part where I think where I said that I think that they were just going to punt this release to April or so, because they could release this without even doing an update to the SharePoint framework. So all they had to do is update the schema that every project is already looking at, so that the web parts will pass with the valid schema. Just one thing though, I did just notice this whole supports self-framing in Teams, allows iframe pages from the same SharePoint tenant domain. If you set it true, this web part can have iframe pages from the same tenant domain. The flag is only applicable to web parts that are hosted in the Teams applications. I wonder if, that's not important. So I guess to you, Patrick, no, there's that we can do it today. There's nothing stopping you from doing it today on your existing projects. 1.21, they didn't need to do that. There's no API change to make it work. It's just new properties in the manifest that gets published that Microsoft will look for. And if it doesn't, it just assumes the defaults, which is no, it doesn't support iframing. Flexible layouts. Cool. All right. So with that is everything that I wanted to cover today. I know I've gone a little bit over here, but I want to go ahead and wrap this up. Hey, thank you very much for all of you who joined me today. Hope you got something out of this. I hope this was useful and a good use of your time. I am looking forward to engaging with all of you. If anybody's going to be at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Las Vegas in May, hit me up. Let me know. I'm going to be there. I'm doing a full day workshop on building declarative agents for Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'm also doing a SharePoint Framework hidden gems and tips and tricks session. I'd love to meet up with you. I'm also going to be at the conference, the TechCon 365 conference in June in Seattle, Washington. With that being said, our next office hours will be back to the third week of the month in April. It'll be in the United States, tax day, which I'm dreading. It'll be on April the 15th. And this might turn into one hell of an office hours, because there is, aside from a new website, I have another major thing that we're doing, project that's underway that is going to roll out in April. And I might spend the majority of our time talking about that because I doubt there's going to be much news the month before the big Microsoft 365 community conference in Vegas. So this might turn into being a bit of a town hall. If not, there will be a town hall live stream as well where you guys can ask questions. If you're currently a customer of mine, big changes for you. Good changes, very good changes, but big changes. If you're not a customer of mine, it's going to be a little more, if you haven't bought one of my courses in the past, things are going to get a lot more interesting in a good way. So I'm really excited about it. I'm swamped. A lot of fun. Okay, everybody. That is it for me today. I'm going to turn it back over to you. I've gone 4 minutes over. I do not want to go 5 minutes over on our session. I'll be respectful of your time, or more respectful of your time than I am right now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Everybody, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of this. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked. Subscribe to the channel if you liked what you saw. Please like the video as well and share it with your friends. Help us get more people to show up for this and have more engagement. I would love it if I'm not constantly just presenting here and these are office hours and we can have real discussions and kind of go back and forth a lot more in the chat, so we can all learn a lot more what everybody else is doing. All right, with that, take care, everybody. I will see everybody next month.